What's up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. We're going to be talking about AEW All Out, not All In, 2023, coming up this Sunday. We're going to break down the card, talk about all our predictions for the matches that are announced, whether there are going to be any changes to that we can see coming, so on and so forth. Who are we if you don't know? Well, I am your host, as always, Tony Mango, and as always, I am joined by Robert E. Felice.
Hello.
And Callum Wiggins.
Hello there.
And a quick reminder to everybody before we get started, if you are over there on YouTube, make sure you are helping us out by clicking the like button, by also dropping your thoughts in the comments below and telling us what you think about this pay-per-view and what you think about our thoughts too, whether you agree or you disagree with it. If you want to help out on the monetary side of things, then you should click on the join button, which will give you access to the same things as the Patreon over there, like the Darkcast and the Pick Your Poison tier. Even $1 a month can go a long way in helping out, not only just keeping the lights on, but also for my morale. And there's also a little thanks button if you're not able to do something like the super chats when you join us live for the post show. And if you want to make sure that you do know when we go live, even though it's pretty much immediately after the pay-per-view ends, then click on that little bell and set up your email alerts to get those notifications when we do go live for that. Also, Redbubble and TeePublic are where you can pick up your merchandise. If you want a t-shirt or stickers or a mug, whatever it might be, there's all sorts of different products, all sorts of different designs for Smark Out Moment and Fanboys Anonymous, and a Mango tees if you want something that just says like Go Sports Team on it, or the perennial favorite that seems to be on the sticker side of it of One Way Ticket to Pound Town, which is one of my more favorite designs. Well, let's get into All Out. I will toss a phrase out right now that is going to be applicable to my thoughts on almost every single one of the 10 segments that we're going to talk about here, which is, I don't mean to yuck on anyone's yum. But prefacing that ahead of time, I think that this is an incredibly lackluster card that has a lot of talented people on it. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of almost everybody that's on this show, and I do think that they're very talented and that they have a good chance to pull off a good in-ring segment, but this does not feel like this is worth $50, especially after somebody just spent $50 on All In. I feel like this is as lazily and haphazardly and shoddily put together as Payback is, and if you want to go back and check out the Payback predictions that we had done where we were talking about how this just doesn't feel like it's even like a B-level pay-per-view, that they just sort of, I guess we have to do one. Let's just throw a promo segment on there and so on and so forth. I feel like this is more of an issue of splitting the All-In card in half and kind of throwing in some filler. Obviously, there's the CM Punk stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit here. We'll talk about some of that on the hot tags. I feel like some changes to the card probably happened this week, and some stuff probably just wasn't planned out ahead of time. And some stuff, I legitimately expect Tony Khan to just be like, well, I mean, I thought that they had a great match tonight, and that's it, because that's his philosophy. And again, I don't want to yuck on anyone's yum. If that is what you go for with pro wrestling, is you just basically want to see a good match within a bubble, I think you're going to enjoy this card for the most part. I personally feel like this is one of the weakest cards that AEW has ever put together, to the point that I don't even know what the options for the main event are. And that's throwing me off, and I'm not going to be super positive about it. You're going to hear a lot of, I honestly don't care about this match, so-and-so wins, from my perspective. But obviously, we're going to have our little debates here. We're going to have some difference of opinion and some pros and cons that maybe we do agree on and maybe we don't agree on. But how are you guys feeling about All Out? Right now, it's 3:21 in the afternoon on Thursday. So maybe there are changes from Rampage. Maybe there are changes on Collision. Are you feeling as blah about it as I am? Or are you feeling more hyped for it? Or are you feeling somewhere in the middle?
I think that this is a card that fans will enjoy, but I wish
You're dancing around it so much.
That there was a little more structure going into it. I'll get into why I'm dancing around it, because I have seen enough of a reaction that I know that a lot of people are actually really excited. So I'm sort of looking at it as, hey, if it's working for your base, then I guess let's see how this goes. I will say I don't think the CM Punk stuff plays that much of a factor into it, because we haven't even gotten to Collision yet. I think this was just a matter of booking the All In and the All Out. We'll see how that plays in future years. But some of this stuff didn't exactly go in the story-driven direction I thought it would, and this is more of a, hey, Chicago, let's have a fun show.
How are you super hyped for it, Cal?
I am super hyped for it. But I think, as is always the case, which was the case for All In, people are overblowing that this is a bad card. It's not a bad card. It's a really solid card. I think that you've got matches that you haven't seen in any configuration before. The Darby, Allin, Luchasaurus. Well, I won't go match by match, but there are matches here that have been built up for several weeks, if not months, that were left out of the All In card and decided to be saved for this one. This is where you're going to get your ever so lauded Kenny Omega singles match that we never seem to get, even though he has plenty of singles matches. It's just, I don't know, people just bitch and moan about just for the sake of bitching and moaning. I think this is it worth $50? Probably not. I would grant that. They should have done some sort of deal where you paid like maybe a bit extra for two shows instead of in one lump sum, rather than having to pay for both separately. That is definitely something that people can criticize about. But I don't think that this is just like B show level thing. Is it one of the, in terms of, because it's the trouble of them running so few pay-per-views in a year that they always manage to make a lot of them feel special and could do a lot of build up to it. I think that they have messed up a little bit in terms of trying to separate both the All In and All Out cards and try and make them feel special. And it was something that they'll have to address next year, because they're doing the same thing and now they have a year to try and iron out a lot of the kinks that this first run at it have demonstrated. But I'm not going to feel like I'm wasting my money buying this card.
I definitely think for the people that spent $50 on both of them, that it would be a much better deal to say, like, all right, it's like $75 for a package deal. Then I could justify that more. But I do look at this and I think this feels like in your house All Out to me. And
no, I do.
Like, one of the reasons why that's the case is because we don't have the world champion defending his title. We don't have the quote real world champion defending his title. We don't have the AEW women's world champion defending her title. We don't have big stars like Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara on this card. We don't have even, we'll talk about match by match and stuff, but like Adam Cole and MJF are on the card. MJF, being the world champion, not only isn't defending his title, that means more, but they're up against the Dark Order. They're not even up against the Kingdom, which was like the thing that's been set up more. And it feels very much like WrestleMania 32, I guess, is a good example, where they're like, look, this is the best we've got available to us right now. Can you please just enjoy the card? And there are matches on here that are going to be good, definitively. Like, this will be a good match. But then there's other things like Samoa Joe versus Shane Taylor that I'm like, you know what? That doesn't mean anything to me, personally. And that feels like that should be a pre-show match, which we don't have any pre-show matches right now. They haven't announced anything for the 0 hour. So there could be changes to this card, and they could shift something around, and something like, I doubt that they're going to move something like, say, Ruby Soho versus Kris Statlander, but something like that could move to the 0 hour, and they can insert something else on here. So there could be changes, but I don't think there's going to be grand sweeping changes that are going to be like, oh, and MJF is going to defend the title against Okada. Or, yeah, I mean, obviously that's not going to be the case, but like, they're not going to put something that's like, whoa, that's the big hook to the whole thing. I don't think Hook's necessarily going to be on the card either, but for anybody that's going to jump on that joke ahead of me. What are you going to say in response to that? I cut you off, Rob. Sorry.
So Tony Khan did just do a media call. So for some updates, he mentioned that he wanted to do a bundle, but with traditional pay-per-view providers, bundling isn't like they couldn't figure it out feasibly for the TV pay-per-view providers, so that ultimately led to it not happening. But he did want to do it and is looking into it.
Okay, so that's not entirely on him, you know.
And then you mentioned the 0 hour, and I do want to say he spoke very highly of the Athena Billy Starks angle that's running in Ring of Honor and wanting to get them on in some capacity on the 0 hour should Billy Starks be cleared.
Either so way, this is like mostly like a Ring of Honor event coming around now.
So either way, Athena will probably get on the 0 hour of this thing. It is kind of half a Ring of Honor thing, and it's one of those things I want them to discuss, and something that we will discuss going forward either way, because they are doing more shows. They are going to do Grand Slam, which is a huge TV special at Arthur Ashe Stadium. They are going to do Wrestle Dream in October. So we are going to be having the discussion of, you know, as they add more events, let's see how they schedule it all out.
And of course, there's TV. Like, they are having the trios titles defended on television rather than on here. And, you know, we've all echoed similar sentences before about, like, yeah, WWE and AEW, they both do need to prioritize having both matches on television and on pay-per-view. You can't just put everything on the pay-per-view, and you can't realistically put everything on television just to bump those rights and then try to sell a pay-per-view that's got garbage on it. But, like, you know, 1 or 2 matches here and there that are big enough that you need to put them on the TV show, it makes sense. And for that matter, I don't think that adding the Acclaimed defending the trios titles on this card would have changed my opinion about it. It would have upgraded it if you would have replaced like the ROH World Television Championship match and put the Acclaimed on there in something that makes sense. Then I would be like, okay, well, you know, that helps the balancing a little bit, but this definitely feels like a strange card to me. It's to have 2 ROH titles on here, potentially a third being into there, and then not having some of the other titles on the line, like the world titles and all, feels very strange. And I don't necessarily think that it's a good strategy to have more of like MJF is going to defend his title at Grand Slam rather than here if you're selling pay-per-views, especially given the match that we've got instead. But
I think it's I don't want to say like just coming down to an experiment, but it will be.
It could be.
The proof will be in the buy rate. If it's like the worst buy rate they've ever had, they know they can't do this going forward, and they know that next time it comes around, they need to devote a lot more effort into making both cards feel like have one marquee match at least on both cards to make them worth putting your money down for. You know, I would say that this one doesn't have something that really stands out as like the absolute marquee thing. I think I know which match that I would do as the main event, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But if the buy rate is still solid or it's as good as it usually is, then it's a demonstration that they can do this and everyone's fine. And well, at least the core of their audience is fine with it.
Yeah. And that's something that applies to WWE stuff too. How many times have we talked about like, well, we can criticize how lazy they are with the bloodline, but they're failing upwards because every time that they do a quarterly call, it's like record numbers for this and record numbers for that. And you're like, you can't blame them if they are looking at the numbers and they're saying, we don't have to put any effort into this shit and we're succeeding more than we did when we were putting more effort in. Why would they bother? I don't blame them for that. But I don't feel that's necessarily the case with Tony Khan here. I'm going to give him a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt by saying I think that the way that Vince and company approach, well, that's not fair either. I'll say it this way. I think that there are people within WWE who care about every single thing that goes out on television. And then there are people that are like, it does not fucking matter, you bunch of dorks. And then I feel like Tony Khan is one of those dorks in a good way of like, yeah, he's going to be super into every single thing that he does. But I think that blinds him sometimes to where he could look at something like, say, I don't know, Serpentigo against who else is like low on the totem pole? A
go-go.
Like, sure, like he could look at like a match between those two and be like, man, I thought it was a great match. I think everybody else is going to think it's a great match too. And lose sight of it. So it's kind of a more like one company has less effort that they put into it. Another company has more effort, but in the wrong perspective sometimes. And obviously everybody has their opinions, and there are going to be things that I say and things that Rob and Callum say that we're all going to agree and disagree on. And you guys are going to think we're crazy, or you guys are going to be like spot on. But I guess let's start breaking them in the individual card down here and talk about the match that right now is not really confirmed, but it is kind of, it's up there, and that could be some changes to the card too. But the idea in mind is that there may be a strap match between Ricky Starks and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. It's going to be confirmed or changed on Collision. So either it's just, yes, the match is happening, or somebody's going to replace Steamboat. But this could very well have been the plan, or it could be the backup plan, because they could have had Ricky Starks versus CM Punk for the Real World Championship could have been on here. I personally think the Real World Championship angle should have led to MJF versus CM Punk, and that should have been the main marquee thing that should have been happening on this card. But I don't see if CM Punk might not necessarily even be on this whatsoever. I am curious about this, if it is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, because his like you're past your prime old man legend thing with Chris Jericho was 14 years ago. Ricky Starks was 19 when that happened, for perspective. So if he's able to go, that's pretty cool that he can wrestle a strap match. And I'm more interested in that than if somebody just comes out to replace him and it's like Ricky Starks versus who could be like a person that fills in that spot. I don't know. I'm blanking on somebody.
Not CM Punk. The person who I think deserves a spot on this card is Hangman Page. And yeah, it's a very thrown together thing. What if Hangman can defend Ricky Steamboat? Because that's ultimately where I think this is going. I don't think Ricky Steamboat's going to wrestle on pay-per-view. If he does, bless him, but like that's not where I see it going. It comes down to who's going to save him. Now, it would make sense for it to be Punk. The thing with Punk is Tony Khan was asked first question on the media call, is CM Punk wrestling? And he said, we're still investigating. You wouldn't even give a firm no. So maybe there is a chance. Obviously, CM Punk would be the preferred just because it makes the most sense. For me, Hangman is an option.
He's a big name that's not on the card right now.
I think, Jericho would be an option if he wasn't doing this thing with Sammy, just because he's got built-in heat with Starks and he's got the built-in history with Steamboat.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, you want to rush and make somebody, and Hook defending a title that is also non-sanctioned against Ricky Starks, who he beat for the FTW title, would be a fun little showcase. There are ways to do this, and this is definitely exciting. I do find it interesting that I think either way we would have been coming into this with a question mark, even if CM Punk didn't do what he did, just because we're going to have to wait till Collision for it to be confirmed anyway. But this is one of the ones that I'm actually very intrigued about, and I'm curious to see how they get Ricky Starks on the card.
I'd be very surprised if it was Ricky Starks versus Ricky Steamboat in a strap match on the show. So, yeah, it's just determining who the right replacement would be. Page is a good option. I think realistically, if it's not Punk, and at this point in time, we don't know whether it will or won't be Punk, so it's kind of a moot point to that point because I'm just going to flat out say that I think it's going to be CM Punk. So I think Punk is gonna face Ricky Starks at All Out. So that'll be what my grand prediction is. But if not, I think it needs to be someone that Ricky can beat. I don't know who that would be.
Especially who he could beat that wouldn't seem like it's obvious that he's going to beat him and that people wouldn't care about it. Like if he was just up against, I don't know, Boulder. Or like, you know what I mean? Action Andretti gets the spot and it's like, okay, really? That's the only one you want to add? You don't want to add in like an Andrade or, you know, like Hangman Page or, you know, somebody who is a big enough name, you know?
See, Page is most interesting to me because I think he is the one big name omitted.
Outside of Jericho and stuff that we were talking about.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Page would be interesting, but it would be quite weird in the sense that he'd be replacing Punk in the match.
Mm-hmm.
And considering their history with each other, you might as well say, hey, Colt Cabana, what do you want to do on this? You available for this show? I think there's, again, it's whether you just want to make Starks look strong in a victory while you wait for CM Punk to have that match with him, or you do have Punk available. Because I think if it's Page, that's the biggest name that you can put against him. But then I don't want Page losing against him because, again, it's not the end of the world. But I don't think Page should be eating too many losses, like one-on-one matches, realistically. So you'd have to have him beat Starks, and then Starks loses, and then you're waiting for Punk to come back to actually have that blow-off match between the two of them that you've been building up to. I mean, I kind of just feel like overall it's just bad for the guy, bad for Ricky, because he's going to have a big match at All Out with CM Punk, and maybe he still will, but like even if he does, no one's really talking about him versus Punk. They're talking about, oh, Punk's still here and he's not suspended.
Yeah, it's overshadowing him no matter what. I mean, even right now, he's not even in the match, and it's still overshadowing because everybody's talking about whether Punk's going to be his opponent.
Yeah, it feels very Wardlow MJF from Double or Nothing a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And Wardlow never recovered.
No, he really hasn't. And for that matter, Wardlow doesn't make any sense to be the guy that would just pop up here and do that, but you never know. I mean, people have made weird, hey, this person's, Carmella's going to fill in this blank, or, you know what I mean? Like, they've done stuff like that in pro wrestling before. One of the main people that I've seen people toss out online, and I'm like, why are you getting yourselves up for this? Because it's not going to happen. Bryan Danielson's not going to replace Ricky Steamboat here.
Yeah, I think the reason people are thinking Danielson is because if someone has to replace Punk, it has to be somebody who can reasonably want to defend Ricky Steamboat and kind of pay homage to that lifestyle. The reason I pitched Jericho as a potential name is because, hey, it's very clear that he's doing the thing with Sammy, but that's starting next week.
Yeah.
Right?
Jericho's much more of a likely option. Even just the fact that Jericho's cleared to compete, obviously, that's a major hurdle.
He's got the history, and he can lose to Ricky. There's a lot of reasons why I think it would be him. But I do want to call attention to what Callum said. And like I said at the beginning, Tony Khan would not give a firm no that CM Punk would not be at this event. And I do think that either way, the segment would have been Ricky Starks challenging Ricky Steamboat to a strap match. So let's see where this goes.
I think, yeah, as I say, we'll have to wait until Collision to get the firm answer. But I think not giving a firm no to that answer means that you would be
he's hoping for
disappointing. Is only the case of hoping he'd be disappointing the Chicago audience if he then was to say a couple of days later or the day before the pay-per-view that, oh yeah, he's facing this person instead. then you have the potential for a crowd backlash, because fucking hell, Punk could set all the people in the crowd's families on fire and they'd still cheer him and treat him like a god going into that match. So yeah, you don't tease them with the thought that Punk could still show up if you have no intention of him showing up.
That would be very indicative of Tony Khan's perspective of booking and the way that he treats his fans too, because that's a pretty obvious thing. Like, you don't tease that idea knowing it's not going to happen and then just hope that you wait until the last minute and then people will kind of, you know, you can grift them that way. We've seen it happen before in pro wrestling. It's not like that would be a brand new thing where it's like, you know, look at the AOP with their whole, like, we're going to create a whole event and it's going to have all these names and people are like, I didn't sign a contract for that. What are you talking about? You know, like, they're just, people lie and stuff. And I don't think that Tony Khan is necessarily lying here to try to be like, let me wait until the 11th hour and then I hope that nobody pays attention on Saturday night. So that way, come Sunday, they're like, I already paid the $50. I don't think that's happening, but it could be, because the way the companies are going around these days, everybody seems like if you're in charge of a company, you're the biggest jerk in the world. So I don't know. I mean, I've seen some wild suggestions out there. I've seen people throw out, like, obviously, like, we talk Paige, we talk about, you know, is this a Punk thing? I've seen some suggestions of, like, bring in somebody from outside the company and whatever. I don't think that that's anywhere a viable option. And I think that it would be lackluster if they just said, like, Dustin Rhodes is going to come to his save and do that, or, you know, and that's no disrespect to Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes is great, but it would feel like you're not following that perspective that a lot of other people have had when they were running a pro wrestling company, which is you either announce something and then you deliver it, or if you have to change, you try to figure out something better. You don't just go, well, I was going to give you an A option, we advertised a B option, and here's a D option or something. So at least for right now, it's not even a match. It's a challenge that's going to happen on Collision for a match. But if they do have the match, I'm going to say somebody replaces Steamboat. And that,
who is it?
I think it's Punk. And I think that Tony Khan is doing his best to, like, to basically say, can everybody just give me a fucking week? Just 1 week here. And we can have Punk show up at the pay-per-view and then he can start serving a suspension or something. I think that's what he's hoping for. And that he's just trying to be like, can everybody turn a blind eye for 5 days? You know what I mean? And if that's the case, CM Punk wins. But that's only if the world title is on the line. If not, then I think that he could have Punk lose. And that could be the start of, like, okay, Punk lost and he quote unquote got injured in there and we're going to suspend him and he's going to take a little bit of time off, or, you know, this is his punishment for that being the case, or, you know. So I will say, if it's Starks versus Punk, or if it's Starks versus Steamboat, I'm leaning towards Starks.
I'm going to say, after this discussion in particular, I'm going to say it's Starks Punk, and Punk wins.
And I'd say that it's Starks Punk. I think it will be for the Real World Championship, and I think Starks is going to win still.
He'll run that fake Real World title.
Yeah, whatever it is.
I'd be down for it. That'd be cool. Well, that's the question mark that we know. The other question mark, of course, what other matches are they going to add to the card that's going to be a part of the 0 hour and stuff? We have no idea based off of the way that this card's going, so I don't even think it's worth just suggesting that, like, all right, well, Aussie Open is going to go up against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara or something along those lines, whatever. Well, we'll talk about the pay-per-view, what happens on there. If they do announce anything in the meantime before the hot tags, we will address it on the hot tags tomorrow. But we do still have 9 matches that are quote-unquote confirmed. One of them being Better Than You, Baby, Adam Cole and MJF, defending the ROH World Tag Team titles that they won at All In against the winners of the Royal Rampage Tag Team #1 Contenders shot. Spoiler alert, we know who wins that. They're up against the Dark Order's Alex Reynolds and John Silver. I like Reynolds and Silver. They're fun. They would be a great set of ROH World Tag Team Champions. And they very well could win this match because of that. Just some like breakdown of miscommunication between Cole and MJF, and you get the titles off of them, and then that's where you transition more of the feud between those two. But this does not feel like this is the match that should be happening. It should be the Kingdom, in my mind. Or it should be Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara.
At least that. It should be the Kingdom for sure. I'm surprised at how over this continues to be. I love it. I think it's a fun angle. But the way this makes sense is that Silver and Reynolds were close with Adam Cole on BTE. And I think they're doing an angle of Adam Cole is kind of a friend whore. Where everybody loves Adam Cole, but
he's just giving out hand shakes left and right.
That's right. And he has this thing out of character of being this great person, but in character of being kind of a prick that abandons his friends as soon as there's a better opportunity for himself. I think there's a way to play into that. I think the Dark Order deserve it. I just don't think it should be them over the Kingdom. But I'm looking forward to it, and if I'm honest, I want them to win because I want Ring of Honor to be its own thing. And the more that it's more prevalent to watch AEW programming to see the major developments with Ring of Honor champions sans Athena, the more I'm like, I don't want to watch 2 hours on Thursday night, And I think there's an easy fix to that, and it's by creating hard divides. And Dark Order being in Ring of Honor, they had a great match with the Righteous at Death Before Dishonor, and I want to see more of that. So I'd like to see the Dark Order win here after some miscommunication.
I think the reason why it's not better than you baby against the Kingdom is because they're retaining the titles here, and they're going to wait until another point in time to do the Kingdom match because the Kingdom are the obvious choice to win the tag titles off of those two, but they're just not going to do it on the show. I think that this is just in the process of what they have been doing with the Dark Order on Ring of Honor TV primarily is the fact that they're rehabilitating them. They are a very strong unit on Ring of Honor, and they have been chasing the tag titles and they've been chasing the trios tag titles. So I think that this is just another step in that process. Yeah, they're going to fall short here, but it's helping re-establish the Dark Order as a more prominent unit, primarily for Ring of Honor's purposes, but could also feature through AEW as well. So yeah, it's just to give the new champions a good win over a decent team in a good match early on. You get to see another double clothesline spot and get the pin. So yeah, this tag team is over. So I don't see why you would want to tarnish that or even like come across the idea of them losing the titles until they inevitably do have that tag team match with the Kingdom. So yeah, and I think that'll probably happen on that could be what happened on Grand Slam for all we know.
You think they make MJF wrestle twice again?
Was he absolutely defending the world title in Grand Slam?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. The winner of the tournament will face him at Grand Slam.
Okay. They could have him. I mean, if this is a whole part of like a whole master strategy, or they're still trying to convert Adam Cole over to the dark side, maybe that could be a way of convincing him to do it. I mean, do some sort of angle where they attack Adam Cole, attack Adam Cole the week beforehand, and MJF gets so pissed off that even though he knows he's got a title defense, he's going to go after them. There are multiple ways you can do it, but I think realistically, that's the choice to be the new tag team champions, and they're just doing this to give them a win under their belts before that happens.
I'm really hoping that the titles change hands, because to me that is very much what can potentially save this being on the card in my mind. Because if it's just a matter of, okay, they're going to retain the titles, then I really don't see why this is on the card instead of all the other options that you could possibly do.
Because they're the most overact in your company.
No, I mean, I get why MJF and Adam Cole are here, but I don't know why Dark Order is going up against them.
Because they don't want to lose the tag titles to them. Yeah, they don't want them to lose the Ring of Honor tag titles yet. So they're basically putting a dummy team in front of them at the moment.
And then that's, to me, the equivalent of if WWE's like, well, we're going to have Roman Reigns on the card, but he's going to be ringside for Jimmy versus Jay, where it's like, all right, you're really milking that in a way that I'm not a big fan of, you know? Yes, the match will be fine, but I need more substance than that. So I'm hoping the Dark Order wins through a miscommunication here, and that the reason why they didn't go with the Kingdom, it's because they want the Kingdom to be the Trios champions down the line instead. Because that could very well work. I mean, Roderick Strong and Taven and Bennett could be the Trios champions, or Cole and them could be the Trios champions. I don't know. But I am about 50-50 on this at the moment. I'm hoping Dark Order, but I'm leaning towards, I'm like a 51-49 leaning towards Cole and MJF at the moment.
I would like to see it go to the Dark Order, but ultimately Callum is correct. It should go to the Kingdom, and Adam Cole and MJF will retain here.
Yeah, it's 1,000,000% better than you, baby. And any idea that it's going to be the Dark Order is winning this is probably just it's just incorrect thinking, I think.
And when we get to the Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show, and if that ends up being the case, and it's just they did a match and then they won, and that's the end of it for a good portion of it, this post-show is going to be me being like, man, I got nothing to say here except for told you so, you know. But that's not the only ROH title on the line, because Shane Taylor is going up against Samoa Joe for the ROH TV title, and being somebody who doesn't watch,
because you don't watch Ring of Honor?
I don't watch Ring of Honor yet, and Shane Taylor is somebody that I am not familiar with, and when I've seen the little bit of that I've seen of him, I wasn't impressed enough to want to watch anymore. Could be a great guy, could be having great matches that I haven't seen, but you know, sometimes you can only really make one first impression, and I've either seen one thing that didn't surprise me and wow me and all that, or I've seen more than one and I've forgotten them. This feels like this would be a match I wouldn't be interested in on the ROH TV show or an ROH pay-per-view, let alone the AEW pay-per-view. This feels very much 0 hour that I wouldn't pay attention to. Why is this on the actual card itself? And that's a little bit of a bias of me just not being a Ring of Honor guy and not having any history with Shane Taylor. I'm sure some other people are like, man, been following him for years and it's so cool to see him up against Samoa Joe, and I can't wait to see him be the ROH TV champion, or, you know, any other kind of perspectives. But from my bubble, this feels much lesser than what I would want on the card. And I'll just go Samoa Joe retaining, because I have no affinity towards Shane Taylor to be like backing him. You know what I mean? Just feels like Joe's up against somebody for the sake of it. And you could have very easily plugged in Stu Grayson or Tony Nese or Colt Cabana or anybody that's in that ROH side of it.
Okay, so I'll fill in the color a little bit here. Shane Taylor's facing him here because he won a tournament to do so. And that tournament was set up by Stokely Hathaway, who is kind of like the Ring of Honor. He's one of the 3 board of directors along with TK and Jerry Lynn. And I think this should be a fun match. This was supposed to be, in my mind, a staple Ring of Honor match for a fun Ring of Honor show. With it being on this card, it would feel weird for Joe to lose. But much like I just said with the Dark Order, I'd like Joe to lose here because Joe is more focused on the Collision side of things. And I really want ROH to be able to develop as its own brand. because the crossover for me isn't working. I'd like to see Stokely kind of screw over Joe, and then I don't know if he aligns himself with Taylor or not, but I'd like to see him, screw over Joe, who's kind of been bullying him, and we can go from there. But much like I said with the last match, while I would like Shane Taylor, I'm leaning towards Samoa Joe. Should be a really fun match, though.
Yeah, I think this match is going to be great because it's two more Hoss type guys just beating the crap out of each other. It's somebody that someone of the kind of proportions that Joe hasn't really gone up against too much in his run as World Television Champion. So I think it'll be a bit more of an interesting dynamic. Somebody who can, I would say, overpower Joe, but at least match his power and throw him around a little bit in the same way that he'll get thrown around. But I can understand why this is on the card. Joe, as demonstrated by the reaction he got all in, is one of the biggest stars in the company right now, and he's doing phenomenal work right now. So having him defend his title against the guy that earned the opportunity out through the tournament they had recently, I think that's just fair enough. So yeah, I think it's one of those ones that is definitely just a match for a lot of people that aren't watching Ring of Honor, but it's a good opportunity to see what Shane Taylor can do against Joe. And yeah, as I say, this will be just one that you're either into the match or you're not into the match, and that will completely determine your anticipation going into it. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And yeah, Joe will win.
So do you guys get a little bit of a sense? We're talking about experimentation here and the idea of all right, booking All In and All Out back to back, and he clearly wants to do it again next year. He's already said that as much. But do you also get the idea that there's an experimentation here, not just of, well, I can kind of just put out whatever and see if people are okay with it with the buy rate, but also if he's putting a lot of ROH things on here, that it's maybe an attempt to be like, people are already paying for the pay-per-view, let me give them some ROH stuff, and maybe that'll hook them into watching more ROH.
I don't see the harm in trying to put some Ring of Honor talent on here, and as a means of trying to attract a bit more attention to it. I guess there's no real harm in that as well. But I also think that, and again, it doesn't apply to everyone, but I think that a large percentage of the people that are buying the pay-per-views, your very much hardcore ones, your 100,000+ people that are doing that, are also a good percentage of them are also watching Ring of Honor, or at least keeping up with it, or at least buying the Ring of Honor pay-per-view shows as well. So yeah, maybe he thinks that putting those matches on will actually appeal to the people that will actually go and buy the pay-per-views.
Would you? Okay, so I think it's fair to have a brief conversation here about our dynamic here. And while it's totally fair, and it's known that you do work around wrestling for your job, Tony, I think it's also completely fair to say you're not keeping up to date on every particular company.
Not at all, by any means.
And I think that
on purpose, and as a fan too. People are like, how come you don't cover Impact? Because I haven't liked anything that I've seen of Impact ever, for the most part. So why would I keep watching a show that, first off, wouldn't get clicks on here, and that people don't necessarily overall care too much about, and that I don't like? And that's why I don't cover NWA. But then when it comes to the ROH and some of the AEW stuff and some of the WWE stuff too, I haven't watched an episode of Level Up since the first one. I haven't watched an episode of Main Event for God knows how many years and years and years and years and years. I skip through segments when I can on Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, all that, well past the point of I don't need to actually hyper analyze every little thing. Yeah.
Right. So I think that this is an experiment. This is a good experimental show for Tony. This is a good, not you, Tony Khan. This is a good idea to see, okay, I am doing all these different things. What's working, what isn't? And then, like Callum said at the beginning, if the buy rate is a steep drop, we can reevaluate. But I think right now he is utilizing the fact that he does have another promotion to play with when needing to book a back-to-back show so quickly.
Like I said with the in your house comment, I really feel like if there's an active point of view of this and not just passive, I think every match is going to be great. So I'm assuming everybody else is going to think so too, which I do very much. I put like, at least like 60% of my perspective into that idea of like, Tony Khan's probably looking at this card and going, this is going to be the best card we've ever done. Because he's just a super fan, And there's no harm in that too, other than if the buy rate ends up sucking and then it's like, oh, it's your responsibility as a business owner to let your own personal opinions aside and go with the business. But we haven't seen that yet. So it could end up doing the best buy rate out of everything that's ever happened at All Out for all we know. But I do think that there's a portion of that. But if there's an active perspective of, let me see what I can work with here because I do have Grand Slam and I do have Wrestle Dream. Maybe people are going to be okay with buying pay-per-views where we don't have the world title on the line. Maybe we can get away with the ROH World Tag Team titles featuring the world champion and he's still on the card. Then it's very much in your house, I think, because we've had in your houses in the past, way back in the day before it was the NXT thing, kids, and where it was like, yeah, the world champion's not on there defending the title, but the Intercontinental title is, you know what I mean? And we've got, let's actually, before we jump around to another match here, let's just toss this out there for the sake of discussion. What do you think is going to be the main event here? Because I think it should be the International Championship match.
Absolutely should be the International
As it stands right now, I also think it should be the International Championship match.
Okay, I thought that we might end up agreeing on that. So we're going to, that's why I just said it. I'll do it now. We're going to save that towards the end to talk about. But it feels like that shouldn't be the main event of a pay-per-view because you have these world titles and everything. And you could argue that maybe the Women's World Championship should be the main event, but that's not on the card either. So that's strange. But for this card, it feels like this has to be the main event. And that in and of itself is an experiment where he could be like, look, maybe I don't even have to have the World Championship on these cards. If I normally get, just to spit out a number, obviously this is not the case, but like if I normally get 100 people buy the pay-per-view and I put everything on the pay-per-view and then I put 75% of it on the pay-per-view and I get 88 people that buy it, that's not a big drop off. I think I can do that and then split the difference and then get an extra pay-per-view like a Wrestle Dream out there. And suddenly I've gotten 3 pay-per-views and 3 buy rates out of what is effectively one major card. And my profits have tripled. Could very well be an experiment like that. And I don't blame him for experimenting and trying that stuff out either. But then that opens itself up to criticism, like me being like, I wouldn't have cared about some of these matches if they were on the card with a lot of the other ones. So I'd still be saying the same thing. Like, I'm not a big Collision watcher. So to me, Miro versus Powerhouse Hobbs, let's talk about that one. I have nothing to say about this at all. I have no means of breaking this down. It's just a match.
It's going to be a fun match where big meaty men slap meat, as we said with the Smojo match. Yeah, that's kind of the point here. And I'm here for it. I hope Hobbs wins because he's young and deserves to win. I want to see people create new stars. And that sucks because, look, I love Miro. I think this Miro in AEW, that run he had at the TNT Championship, it's the most fun shit I've ever seen him do. But as it stands, I want Hobbs to win.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking forward to it because I just think that these two guys are just going to throw each other around for a lot of times, going to have some hard-hitting moves against each other. So I think the match itself should be an interesting dynamic between the two of them. I'm pretty convinced Miro's going to win. Powerhouse Hobbs is still got like QT Marshall clinging onto his ankles pretty much, just trying to drag himself like, please take us back and let us help you with this things. And this is going to, it's going to be another case of them trying and it's going to backfire on them and Miro's going to get the victory over Hobbs. And then Hobbs will, I'm hopeful over the next couple of weeks, just literally destroy every single member of QTV, like NQTV in its entirety as a result of it, and then move on to whether is next for him. I think he's one of those people that's unfortunately stuck in a position of being a super talented and on the rise guy in a company where there's a lot of really established top level people that it's hard to break through. And Miro is not really among that because he's been so in and out of the company, but I think that they're trying to re-establish him probably more than trying to establish Hobbs because they know they've got more time with Hobbs, or at least for the time being. So I think Miro is, at least for now, will be the one to get the victory.
I think so too. And this started with Hobbs calling out Miro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the impetus of like, I'm gonna redeem myself, so I'm gonna call it the Redeemer, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I feel like the QTV stuff definitely plays into this, and Hobbs losing makes the most sense to me. I'd go with Miro too, but to me it is just sort of like a guy challenged another guy to a match, and then we waited a couple weeks and stuff. So it's not my most favorite thing on the card, but I like both of them. So I'm hoping that they have a really good match. And that's the same with a lot of these things. Like, I said it at the beginning of this. I like a lot of the people here. And I think a lot of them can have really good matches. It's just that it feels kind of blah. I'll say the same thing for the 8-man tag team match. Bullet Club Gold against FTR and Young Bucks. This feels like, let's get them on the card, and you guys are going to enjoy it. And I'm sure we all will. It'll be a good match. I wish that people were doing something more, though. And I'll say Bullet Club Gold wins because FTR and Young Bucks don't really have the means to get along. So there should be a little bit of a miscommunication there. And then that way we can get Jay White and Juice Robinson against FTR for the tag titles down the line.
We should get a 3-way ladder at Grand Slam. Preferably with Juice and Jay and not the Guns. Love the Guns. They're very funny in this group. This group, Bullet Club Gold is my favorite thing not named CM Punk on Collision. They're fantastic. This match should rule. I also wish it was something with a bit more weight, but who cares? Like this is the one where I go, all right, I'll bite. This is the fun one. Let's have a banger.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with pretty much every AEW show having some kind of hottie match on it. This is pretty much it. You have 8 guys that are really good, just going at each other at like a breakneck pace because they don't need to. Again, you don't need to tell that much of a story in an 8-man tag team match, so you can just be a bit more of a spot fest. It'll be interesting to see what configurations of FTR and the Young Bucks do, like their tag team moves, but with one member of FTR and one of the Bucks, and then the other way around. So I think that'd be a fun aspect to it. I don't think there's any real need for one team to necessarily win over the other one. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to have Jay White or Juice Robinson pin one of FTR to get a tag title shot, because realistically they had a shot at the tag titles and didn't win a little while back. So I think that there is a good possibility that this leads to some kind of 3-way, whether it's just straight up tag, whether it's a ladder match, however approach they take to it, but it could be a 3-way tag match, and that's where you transition the belts onto one of them. And I'm glad they didn't take that approach on this show, like just go straight into a 3-way tag title match, because even though that's on paper a bigger match, the Young Bucks just lost, and also Jay White and Juice Robinson just lost, so surely someone else will be up next to challenge FTR. But again, that's just not so much the idea of wanting to always have something new, but you want to at least give a bit of a reason for them to be getting an immediate rematch for the titles after they both were definitively beaten, like clean, by FTR. But I think there's a good chance the babyfaces win this one, because you've got the Guns right there to take the pinfall. So you have one of the Jacksons pin one of the Guns, and so they get another win back. So maybe they get to, at least if they get another victory again, then that can at least put them on the path to challenging FTR again for the titles. it means you keep Jay White and Drew Strong really strong because they also they won already at All In. Like they were part of the 6-man tag that won. So yeah, I don't think that it's out of the question for FTR and the Bucks to get the victory here.
I could see a scenario where the Bucks pin one of the Guns and then they use that to spin like, well, we only won the match because of us. We got the win, so we should have another title match. And then you could even play into, if you're going to do the triple threat, which might not even be the case. I mean, we might not even get FTR versus Young Bucks for another year, for all we know. But I could see them being like, all right, Matt Jackson, for instance, pins Colten Gunn. Then they try to position themselves for a tag title match. Jay White and Juice Robinson are like, yeah, you beat the Guns, but you didn't beat us. We won it all in. And then it's, okay, well, both teams get the title shot, and you can play into that. This is sort of, I don't even think that this matters, because whatever the plan is going forward, it's just like either team can win, and it's just you're going to move on the way that you're going to move on. So it's mostly there for a bunch of talented people to have an in-ring segment, and I think the vast majority of the people watching are just going to be like, yeah, it was a fun match, I love it. And sometimes that's okay too, But I do think that
they insert many men.
That's another. Why don't we have like a casino battle royale on this?
Not what I meant, but I'll go with it. Yeah, casino battle royale would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, or a casino ladder match. I think that should have been added to this card. Whether it's the women's division, the tag team division, the men's division, that's another thing that I think is missing on this card. But a match that's in the tag team spectrum that I think is potentially one of those, the reason why this person won is because they're going to have another match. And this is another ROH type thing. And it's another thing that feels like it's just kind of a little bit of, let's take a couple people that just wrestled and just put them in another match. And also, I'm not big on it. It's Eddie Kingston and Katsuyori Shibata against Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. Again, repeat myself about 1 million times. Talented people that are going to have a fun segment, but I just don't ultimately care. And if the result is like Kingston gets the win so he can get another shot at Claudio, it feels like you're just sort of, you're hitting the rewind button so you can get back to the same spot you were before. Same as if Yuta gets another shot at Shibata.
Should be a really good match. I feel like we all know where this is going, because it should be Claudio Kingston at Grand Slam. And now they're totally cool with, because for a while I do a Ring of Honor recap show on Love Wrestling, and for a while it was like, oh, they should save it for the Ring of Honor show. Like, you don't need to save it for December. You don't. Just do the damn thing at Grand Slam. Let Eddie Kingston win in front of his home crowd. That'll be fun. This is fun. Shibata's wrestling. It's kind of like Edge for me, where you're not going to hear me say, "Ooh, Shibata is wrestling." You couldn't for a while. So, yay. Should be really good. I will admit, I don't think that this is amazing, crazy booking, but for what we're getting, I think this is going to be one of the better matches on the show.
Yeah, I was really excited for this match because just like all the guys involved, they've fought in different configurations before, but that helps build up chemistry and helps lead into a few more interesting scenarios and dynamics about how they go up against each other. Yeah, I think this is very straightforward, to the point booking, but it is logical and effective. You have Kingston on one side want to go after Claudio's Ring of Honor title, and Shibata on the other side, and Will want to go after his pure title because Shibata was the guy that took it from him in the first place. So yeah, just a straightforward way of getting both those matches to happen at some point down the road. So yeah, as a fun match, should be a lot of fun, and it will lead to some bigger matches down the road for both of them. So
if I had one criticism, it would be, I would really like to see more of just some kind of vignette that makes this make sense. Yeah, we saw what happened on the show, but there was no mention of Shibata, and Tony Khan was just like, hey, guess what? We got Shibata. a little bit more of a, hey, Tony, I want a match and I'm bringing in Shibata. And then it's like, okay, that would be perfect to me.
Across the board, I would like more explanation for some of those things. Yeah.
Well, part of that is on you because you haven't been watching Collision or Ring of Honor, and I get it. But, at least with some of those things, there is a little bit of an explanation. But with this one, it was just like, hey, Shibata's here, and I know you're not going to be mad about that, so here you go.
And Shibata has had matches with him before, like we just touched upon. He beat Wheeler Yuta for the title, so it's not like that's like coming out of completely nowhere. But it's weird to me, and this isn't just an AEW thing. It happens with other promotions too, and WWE is guilty of this. But it's weird to me when you have somebody beat somebody for a championship, and then you kind of just like circle around a bunch of other things to come back to doing that rematch again. That's not my preferred style of booking. And I don't know, from an outsider's POV, that seems very, I don't know, a little like New Japan-y kind of like, okay, well, the one person won this one match a couple weeks ago, so that means that they deserve a title shot in the future, and we'll come around to it. Wait a month or two or something, which works for some things, works for other things better, and not my preference. I'll say that. So I would like the best case scenario here with what we're given, because I do think we should have something better and more interesting. But the best case scenario I could see coming out of this is Kingston gets a shot at Claudio, wins the ROH title at Grand Slam. The Shibata thing is just to get somebody else on the card because you didn't want to throw like Chuck Taylor in there instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Kingston and Shibata win.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the right call.
I think Claudio and Wheeler are going to win. And that's going to be leading into Wheeler challenging Shibata for the title.
Do you think they're going to do Kingston Claudio at Grand Slam, or do you think they're going to do something else?
Oh, they'll still do it at Grand Slam, but like Eddie Kingston was part of the winning team at All In, so they don't need to.
Right, but however, Eddie Kingston should have been the one pinning Claudio, not Orange Cassidy. So I think Eddie Kingston has to pin Claudio here.
I mean, there is something to be said about Blackpool Combat Club lost it All In, and Kingston just beat Yuto on Dynamite. Do you want to have the BCC lose 3 times within the span of a week?
I think they're fucking untouchable. I think they can lose however much they want.
I'll give you that. I'll give you 3 members of the Blackpool Combat Club are untouchable. One guy that's not, and he needs to win this match. That's Yuta.
Fair. But I think if Yuta doesn't eat the pin here, he didn't eat the pin at Wembley Stadium. So I think you can tell a story that Claudio's losing it a bit, and maybe he's not as untouchable as he thinks.
This is one of the more interesting ones when it comes to that outcome. Let's move over to Kris Statlander versus Ruby Soho for the AEW TBS Championship. I, for a little while, was thinking that Ruby Soho was going to win this belt, and that was going to be a means to just give her a championship because they don't want to give her the women's world title. The more I think about it, now that they just gave that women's world title to Saraya, maybe they don't put the TBS title on Ruby, unless the plan is for Toni Storm to just be going nuts because she's the one that doesn't have the belt out of the 3 of them.
Well, I think they're dead, aren't they done? Like, they flat out said that. It's weird because they had Toni Storm say they're done, and they booked them in a tag, didn't they? I don't know.
She didn't say they were done. She said she just can't. She doesn't feel like she can trust them anymore. But she might have just been ranting for the sake of ranting because that's her gimmick right now.
By the way, delusional Toni Storm is my favorite character right now. She's tremendous. Yeah, I think Statlander should win. People are still enjoying her. I want Ruby to win because I think Ruby deserves something. Ruby hasn't won a title on TV yet. Anywhere. Like, I just want her to win something. But I'll go Stat.
Out of all the matches almost in this card, I think this one takes the least amount of sense. In that, like, this should be Mercedes Martinez challenging Kris Statlander because that's the story they've been telling on Collision. It should either be Kris Statlander versus Mercedes Martinez, or it should be some kind of triple threat or fatal four-way with Willow Nightingale and Diamante involved, because that's what the story's been. And then out of nowhere, Ruby Soho just says, "Hey, I want a shot at the TBS title." It's like, okay, like, there's no actual story here.
So I assume you're going Stat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Statlander should retain here. I think it would be ridiculous for Ruby to win after, like I say, absolutely zero build towards this whatsoever. So,
wow, Callum Wiggins. Oh, jeez.
I'm gonna go Stat too.
I mean, yeah, it's Stats to win. She just got it. She's doing her own thing. She's coming into her own.
I just said what I wanted to have as the women's match on this show. It's like I've just pointed out that that's what I want. Like, I don't think Ruby should be in this match because they have not done anything for Ruby to be in this match other than her saying, "I want a shot at the TBS title."
Oh no, I agree with you. I was fucking with you, but like, you're not wrong.
Plus, I think that there is a chance that they could do Ruby versus Toni Storm versus Saraya for that women's world title down, a couple matches from now or something. And if Ruby wins the TBS title, that'll throw a monkey in that wrench. Yeah. You know what I just thought of? I got the perfect replacement for Ricky Steamboat. Tito Santana. If people get that joke, then you've been following the podcast for a while, and I love you.
Did you have a fucking alarm on your phone? I was like, okay, it's been deep enough into the podcast. Let me just throw this out there for no reason.
No, it just popped into my mind when I was looking at Statlander's name. I don't know why. I guess because like the STAT and like Tito, like maybe that kind of triggered something. But
I'm surprised you didn't say tugboat. You replace the steamboat with the tugboat instead.
Ricky the Steamboat. Yeah. Hall of Fame jokes right there. Tugger the tugboat boat. No. Anyway, Luchasaurus is defending Christian Cage's TNT Championship against Darby Allin here. Yeah, I mean, we're in a spot where this has been built up and they took like side routes to get here, and there was the whole Nick Wayne thing and the Swerve thing and the AR Fox thing and the Sting thing, Sting and the Thing. That's another joke from back in the day. And it's all culminating, I'm assuming, I don't think it's really going to go further past this, with what I'm hoping is Luchasaurus retaining, because it's more interesting to me to keep this whole Christian and Luchasaurus TNT title thing than for it to just go back to Darby Allin, because Darby Allin's already been like a 2 or 3 time TNT champion, and I got a feeling if he wins it, he's just going to do the same thing that he's done before with the belt, which is just basically have a bunch of matches with people and then lose it. Keep it on Christian, so to speak.
If Christian wasn't doing so much good here, I would say absolutely Darby needs to win. Darby needs a win. And more than anything, the TNT Championship needs something. But they just lucked into having Christian by proxy of Luchasaurus. This one's a toss-up for me. I do want to shout this one out as being the best built-up match on the show. Darby Allin was like the only person who like simultaneously built up things, and I think that worked out really well.
I think there's one other match we haven't talked about yet that's built up a little bit better.
I'm gonna go Luchasaurus just because I like Father of the Year Christian Cage.
I mean, I really enjoy what Christian's been doing as the fake TNT champion, the guy who's holding the belt for Luchasaurus, and so part of me does want to see that continue because it's a lot of fun. But I think that Darby should win this. It makes too much sense. Darby is a great TNT champion. He's the best TNT champion this company's ever had. He does what you should do with a title like that, which is have a load of matches with people and defend it, and then lose it to somebody. And that's kind of That's kind of what champions should be doing, really, more often than not. And I think that, like, you've got a ready-made story already for him to drop the title to, or at least fight Swerve Strickland for the title. So I think that's the obvious direction to go in.
That is a good point. I like where he's going.
So yeah, I think that the Luchasaurus and Christian Cage thing has been good. Has been a lot of fun, but I think, you know, you could say that it's run its course. I'd say run its course, but like it's been going for 2+ months now. So I think with a TNT title, you shouldn't be having it on someone for. Don't always need to be having it on someone for like 6+ months at a time, especially when your other mid card men's champion has been holding it since the start of the year, pretty much. So yeah, I think that we'll have. I would go with Darby Allin winning here.
That's one vote for Darby. I'm going Luchasaurus. And what was yours, Rob? Lucha?
I'm honestly dead in the middle.
No.
But I'm gonna guess that they keep it on Luchasaurus because they like this Christian thing. I hope it's Darby.
The match that I think is something that's been built up better than this that I was just alluding to is Konosuke Takeshita against Kenny Omega. We saw them fight at Allin, but in a multi-man match. So there's that sort of caveat of like, but now you're getting the singles match, and you know, there's a split between the version of me that goes, yeah, but I have seen them interact. And then there's the other part that goes, but it's a different dynamic. So I get it. It's just, yeah. Sometimes I wish that there was a little bit more of a little extra added spice to it. Not that they should necessarily have a gimmick or something, but I do think that this isn't S tier what it should be. It's like A- kind of. But Don Callis is great. Takeshita is great in the ring. Kenny Omega's, of course, Kenny Omega. They're going to have easily one of the best matches on this card. And bell to belt, probably going to be the best segment overall. So, thumbs up on that front. If the feud's ending, Omega wins. Wouldn't shock me if Takeshita wins, though.
I think Takeshita wins. And I think it's a fantastic wrestling match. I wouldn't be surprised if Omega wins, but I think Omega wants to put over Takeshita. And Kenny's bulletproof. He can lose from now until the end of time and still be Kenny Omega. So I think Takeshita wins. I think this is the match a lot of people are looking most forward to. And it'll be good to see Kenny in a singles match against a guy who this company did a banger job by signing and making him a core player.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably my second most anticipated match on the whole card. Just because I think that there's a very good possibility, knowing have worked with pretty much everybody they face one-on-one throughout the entirety of AEW and beyond, that they could have not only match of the night, but a better match than anything we saw at Allin as well. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be fantastic. If they want to go all the way with it, there might be the potential that they hold back a little bit because it's not done yet. I don't think it will be done regardless of the result here. I'm going with Omega winning, but I don't think that that's the end of it, the end of the feud at that point, because he still hasn't got his hands on Don Callis, and that's the end game, is for him to kind of quote unquote finish Don. So I think that regardless of whether he wins or loses, this is going to be continuing at least for, like, as a Grand Slam could be the point where it does finish, or they could potentially even extend this out into Full Gear. I don't think that's out of the question to drag out for a little bit longer than that. But yeah, I'm really excited for what these two can do against each other in a one-on-one setting.
What do you think that they could do at Full Gear that would be like a way to finish this? Do you think there's like a specific gimmick, or do you think it's just flat out they just have another match and they just consider it the end?
Could be some kind of handicap match instead, where it's like Don
get your
Callis is
hand
an
on
actual
Callis.
participant.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that could be like a no holds barred type of match or something that has a bit more of an extreme connotation to it. But maybe lights out.
Oh yeah, lights out. That could work.
We haven't had a lights out match in a while, so, and that could be a good way of having Don Callis be in it, because he probably wouldn't be a willing participant. But that basically means that Kenny has carte blanche to do whatever he wants to Don, because lights out matches are unsanctioned.
Yeah, Don Callis in a shark cage match. I think we talked about everything other than that international championship match, right? I don't think we're missing anything else. So let's get into what we assume is going to be the main event, unless they announce anything like, suddenly there is CM Punk versus Ricky Starks. Maybe that'll end up being the main event. But Orange Cassidy has been one of my favorites from the very start. Jon Moxley is the anchor of this promotion. Cassidy's title reign has gone on longer than any champion in a long time. And he's had one hell of a run that we keep perpetually saying is going to end, and it keeps continuing and it keeps being awesome. So I am going to say I think Jon Moxley wins the belt here, but I've been saying that for all these other ones, and wouldn't surprise me if I'm wrong again. I'm excited for this match. I'm definitely looking forward to what these two can put on together, because they're two of my more favorites.
Yep, they sold me a ticket on this being the main event with Orange's go home promo last night. It was super cool to see him just go, yeah, I don't usually talk, but I'm going to fight until somebody absolutely beats me into the ground for this, because this is what matters. He cut a really good, I can be the face of this company promo, where he was like, AEW is for everyone that's different, and I was always told I'm too small, I'm too this, I'm too that. And then you've got Mr. AEW across the ring from him in Mox. And he's the only 3-time world champion in the company history. They could main event this, and I would not be mad, especially with the performance that Cassidy put on last week in Stadium Stampede, which was the greatest performance I've seen him put on to date. He got violent, he got intense, it's so good what they've done with this character because of this belt. And I would like to see the main event, this show, and I'm still ultimately saying Jon Moxley takes it from him, and there's no shame in that, because you're losing to Jon Moxley. But this should be a banger match, maybe my most anticipated match. This could even just be the beginning. You could run it back with hardcore matches, whatever you want. This one's really good. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's one of these. It's one of the reasons why, just perversely, I'm kind of happy that neither the men's or women's world title matches are being defended. So Cassidy does have the opportunity, hopefully, to defend this in the main event of the show, because I think that he's merited it on the strength of this title run. He's been used to pretty much opening almost every episode of Dynamite, it feels like, pretty much the entire year, and he's defended it rigorously against so many people, and he's had fantastic matches week in, week out. And Moxley is, he is one of the top stars in AEW, multiple-time world champion. He is the right kind of guy to both elevate this title to feeling like, secondary to the world title, but almost feeling like a 1B rather than the 2 level to it. And yeah, Cassidy has set it up perfectly by being such a diligent champion for it. So yeah, I'm going to go with Moxley getting the victory here, but I'm super excited what they'll do together and how Moxley will help elevate Cassidy even further, because yeah, he's done such fantastic work, not even just for the past year, pretty much ever since he's been in AEW. So I think that this is in the run, and hopefully this will be the match that cements him as, yeah, this guy can be a main eventer. I don't know whether he'll ever be AEW champion. I think that's probably maybe a step too far for him. But he could definitely hold this title again. He could definitely be TNT champion. And he could be like a consistent challenger for the world title as well. Definitely Ring of Honor world champion maybe at some day as well. Like I want this title run, which has been so good throughout the entire year, one of the best title runs in AEW's history, to end on the right note as being the main event of this show.
Alrighty, well, that is All Out, at least as far as Thursday afternoon. Maybe they announce something different tomorrow. Maybe they announce some changes on Collision. We'll address them in some fashion here and there. At least on the website, you'll see some updates when that happens, if that does. I'm sure that they're obviously going to announce something for the 0 hours. I'll throw in some predictions for some of that stuff. But we do have the hot tags coming up next on tomorrow's episode. And we got Payback coming up on the weekend. We're going to be covering that. We got the All Out pay-per-view happening after that. Maybe it is main evented by Orange Cassidy and all that. Maybe there's another thing that's going to pop up. Oh, by the way, for anybody who is interested in the Fanboys Anonymous side of things and movie reviews and stuff, I finally watched Wet Hot American Summer for the first time the other day. And that's where Paul Rudd's character is the inspiration for Orange Cassidy. Thought it was a great movie, and Paul Rudd's character was my favorite part of the whole thing. And for anybody who has watched that movie, if you don't like the All Out predictions that we did right here, well, you taste like a burger, and I don't like you anymore. I'll say that. We will run down the CM Punk stuff in more detail with the hot tags for anybody who's wondering why we didn't talk about that as much here, and like the Jack Perry situation and the Miro thing that was seemingly a joke. And I'm sure that something's going to drop later on today that'll probably be added into the hot tags too, the way that things normally go. So make sure you are paying attention to those hot tags and the Payback side of things and the All Out side of things. Obviously, check out fanboysanonymous.com for the stuff I mentioned before, like the Blueprint Project and everything that you can find over on that side. Go to the link tree, though, amangotree.com, and you will see links to all the different accounts that you should be following and sharing to people that you think might be interested in any of this kind of content. Check out the letterbox. Check out my personal stuff at Tony Mango. And make sure you are following Rob and Callum.
Yep. Follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. I don't really want to hype anything up, but I have ideas for personal content coming soon, website or not. And check out Fightful because you want to know more about CM Punk. Sean Ross Sapp is the main verifiable guy. If he reports it, it's accurate. He's the one who reported that Miro and Punk was kind of in jest after everybody jumped on that. So Fightful.com, Fightful Select, it's the best $5 in the business. Also check out WrestleZone because they do great work as well.
So you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every single week on smarkatmoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their performances in the previous week of action. And then you can also, while there, check out the Fantasy League or head to WWEFantasyLeague.com to see how our teams are performing, as things will get mixed up a little bit following the Payback show and following our predictions and who gets who wins the predictions and then who gets to mess with their team and other teams as a result of that.
Okie dokie, that means we're done. We want to thank you, of course, for listening. Thank you in advance for dropping your comments below, or if you've already done that, then thank you after having done that. And as we said, hot tags, then Payback, then All Out. 3 more episodes coming over the next 3 days. Lots of content this week on Smark Out Moment. All the more reason why you should be hitting up that $1 a month at least tier over there on Patreon or the YouTube channel membership. $5, $10, whatever it might be, goes a long, long way and is a difference maker in continuing to have weeks like this where I don't tell myself, maybe we just do one show where we speed through our predictions and talk about Payback and All Out at the same time and make it a 1 hour super fast thing. No, you ended up getting like 3 hours out of just the prediction side of it. Keep that in mind. Motivate me. In any case, that's another Smark out moment, and we're being counted out.